Welcome back to the Nerd Nest, everybody. I'm Bill. We've got Carrie here today, and it's just the two of us. And we've got quite a bit of stuff to talk about. We have the ROG Ally X, which just made a sound for some reason as I picked it up. We've got the ROG Ally X. We've got the Nintendo Direct last week, and I've got a surprise that I think is really cool that I'll save for the end of the show. Carrie, don't let me forget about the surprise. Carrie, how's your week been, man? What have you been up to? Actually, it's been more than a week. How long has it been?
Oh, it's been a while. It's always something that's been happening. Either the last time I went to Computex, and then I've just been trying to catch up on stuff. I'm still behind on my channel. But yeah, it's been quite a bit.
Yeah, it's been a while, and we're gonna start things off with what games we've been playing. Carrie, you said that you've gone back to a game that you haven't played in a while. What game's that?
I've been playing Diablo 4 since the new season came out. They have done a lot with the entire loot system. They've changed a bunch of things. You know, before it was like, you'd have like, oh, get 2% on some injured enemy. If the enemy's injured, you have a 2% damaging. It's like, well, that's a very specific use case, and I don't think I want that or care for that. and they've done a bunch. I'm playing as a barbarian this time instead of my necro build.
Is it a warrior?
I always call them barbarians, but yeah, it's warrior. Same difference.
Oh, okay.
Class.
I wasn't sure if they had added a new class to the game.
Right. Yeah. So I always just call them barbarian. The thing that stinks a little bit is on the hardcore necro build that I have. I got all the Lilith statues. I did all of the getting favor in each town so that you get the skill points and whatever, and that doesn't track for the non-hardcore characters. And I guess that's fine, but it's like, if I've done it on hardcore, certainly I should be able to do it on the regular one. I could see doing it on the regular one and not giving it to the hardcore, but not the other way around. Just because hardcore is harder, right? Like if you die, you have to start over from scratch.
Yeah.
So none of that stuff was unlocked. So I've been kind of going through that a little bit. But thankfully, since I beat the game on hardcore, I don't have to play through the campaign again on regular one. But yeah, they have like my barbarian. I got some ancient gear like at level 20. And that like really kickstarted me like to wanting to play more. So I have like this Thorns build, which is absolutely hilarious because I just stand and like anything hits me, they instantly die, and I'm just like, this is correct. This is how the game is supposed to be played.
Yeah, I don't remember what game I was playing, but I did a similar Thorns build in a game, and it definitely felt overpowered. Yeah. And at some point it started to kind of soak the fun out of it because I just wasn't doing anything. I was just kind of walking around. It was almost like playing Vampire Survivors, where you only move the stick.
yeah. So I'm now going through Nightmare Dungeons, so now it's starting to like I actually have to pay attention and stuff. But I still have that same chess piece from like level 20. I'm level 51 now. So I've just been playing during my downtime. I've been playing on Xbox and just on my couch. And Diablo 4 is a great couch game. More so than Diablo's ever been. And I'm not playing hardcore on Xbox at all because I don't want to just stress about anything. So it's kind of just been super easy, and I've been really enjoying the new season. All the legacy armor stuff that you have, they also have like different ways to, how like in Diablo 4 they would, in some drops you would have, it would be like +2 to whatever skill you have as your character class, so you can take it. Yeah, so now you can go to the blacksmith and like imprint that if you get the blueprints for it. So now blueprints have rarity and stuff, so they've added stuff to it so that you're not so bound by like whatever the role was of your gear. Like whatever it was, like, oh crap, that wasn't a good roll, even though I like what this was. So it's less dependent on that. There's a lot of things that they did better. I think the overall loot system, how fast they give EXP is better because it's not so much of a slog. So, I mean, I think I only put in like 3 days and I'm like went from level 1 to level 51 as my warrior. So it's been going by fast and I've been enjoying it. And that's what I've been playing during whatever pockets of time that I have available.
That's awesome. I really do like I enjoyed playing Diablo 1 on my computer. I never played Diablo 2. when Diablo 3 came out, I bought it for the computer again, and I played the hell out of it then. But then when they brought out the console version and it was like a controller, everybody was like, "Oh, that's going to be terrible." And then when I picked it up, I was like, "Oh, this is the right way to play. This is so much better." And yeah, I understand that there's some purists out there that really, really like mouse and keyboard, and you know, everybody's preference is perfectly fine. But for me, Diablo got real good once you could play with a controller, sitting on the couch, just chilling. Is so much better. And they really nailed the ability to use a controller. It didn't feel, I never felt like I was playing with a disadvantage. Right. And then of course Diablo 4 launched with controller support, so I was here for it. And I'm, you know, hearing you talk about it makes me want to reinstall, which I shouldn't, because like that game is a huge time sink. Yeah. But I, you know what? I think I'm going to start installing it right on my my ROG Ally X, which we'll talk about in a little bit here on the show. So you've just been playing it on your Xbox?
Yeah, so it was on Game Pass. So I was like, let me just put it on Game Pass. I could just be at my couch in my living room. And then when I started playing through it, I was like, oh man, I should play like on my little handhelds when I can get xCloud. It's not on xCloud.
That's weird.
I know. It's like the most weirdly isolated game that exists on Game Pass right now. On the PC, you have to download it through Battle.net. So you have the PC build on Game Pass. On Game Pass for Xbox, it's the Xbox version. And there is no cloud version whatsoever. So this is like you can feel like this is the beginning of Activision Blizzard King being owned by Xbox, because it's completely isolated and separated. But I would have wished that typically xCloud versions are the Xbox version that you play. So I was like, well, what's the big deal? I'll just be playing the Xbox version. Nope, can't do it.
But I mean, I wonder... that doesn't make any sense to me, because Diablo 4 is the perfect kind of game for cloud gaming, because it's always online. It's like World of Warcraft, and you know, is it on? Because like the other Activision games are on GeForce Now. Is Diablo 4 on GeForce Now?
I don't know, but it would be the PC build, so potentially. Yeah,
it would be the PC build.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Diablo 4 is awesome, and I need to get back to it, because you said that you had already like in hardcore mode you defeated like the story. I never finished the story. I think I got to like, I don't know how many acts there are, but I think I was like one act away from the finish, and something shiny caught my eye, and I never got back to it. So I do want to finish the story, because my daughter's fiance was talking about it, and he was like, yeah, that was, he never really played those kind of games. And he said, when I told him about it and he started playing it, he said, yeah, that ending cutscene, which I don't know what happens, but he said that ending cutscene is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. I was like, oh, those are Blizzard cutscenes. That's how Blizzard rolls. They make amazing cutscenes, and they do a really good job telling stories. So I should get back and finish that story. You've been playing anything else that you want to talk about before I jump in?
The only other game that I played, and this is when, during my absence, was Animal Well. I absolutely loved Animal Well, and I only beat the first ending of it, and there's like 3 more endings to go. So that's a game where I finished in quotes, but want to get back to it. Still through the lens of I've avoided every Reddit thread. I've avoided anyone talking about the game, because I feel like the game. Did you ever play Tunic?
I did not play Tunic, but I think it's on Game Pass, so I can if I want.
So
it's
Tunic,
also on PS Plus.
Yeah, so Tunic is a fantastic game as well, and everything in that game is available to you from the very beginning. The only thing that doesn't exist is your knowledge of how to use anything. So, like as you're going through there, you're basically in Tunic, you're building the Legend of Zelda manual, but the Tunic manual, and the manual tells you how to do things. And it's a really clever way how they unfold everything. and they go a little bit deeper with how like the language is actually not just gibberish; it actually is decipherable. So there's just lots of neat things about Tunic. I really love Tunic as well, and that's the same type of game where there is no tutorial. It's just here's the game, figure it out, have fun. And Outer Wilds is like that. Outer Wilds is fantastic. I had so many perfect times, like just randomly doing things in Outer Wilds. So there's like, do you ever play Outer Wilds?
I started it, never got very far. I own it, so I should play it at some point. But I start games. That's what I do.
It's so I never finished Outer Wilds either. But I played a good amount of it, and I loved it's Groundhog's Day, right? That's what you're playing in Outer Wild. But you keep on exploring things, and you have a set time limit to do those things in. And one of the planets that they have is almost like an hourglass planet, like two twin planets, but they're basically an hourglass between them. So sand is falling between them. And you can kind of know how much time you have left in the world by looking at the twin planets. Which is funny, but it's like you can almost think like the game devs like we should have like an hourglass in space. What if you could visit the hourglass? And I went deep into the planet, and I'm going down, and I get some information like, oh, that's neat, and I turn around, and the room filled up with sand, so I couldn't exit anymore, and I was like, oh no! But it was like such perfect timing for me to finish everything I needed to do in that particular room to then die and have the whole thing reset again. There's just so many magical moments in that. So that's the type of games that I really love. Breath of the Wild is kind of like that, right? Like Breath of the Wild is like, there's very few tooltips. Every now and again, they're like, pling, and maybe there's like 8 of them in total. But like once you go out of the cave, they pretty much stop. And it's just like, what's over there? And you just start going over there and you see the ghost of the dude. And it's just, I prefer that style.
I don't remember exactly. There was a Breath of the Wild clip out there there was a woman streaming on Twitch, and she had basically played almost the whole game, and then she found like the first room where you're supposed to go in and fight like a guardian, and she went in there, and there was like a little tutorial that taught her how to do a thing, and she had been playing for like 70 hours without knowing how to do whatever it was that was in that tutorial. And she was like, are you kidding me? I could have been doing that this whole time. And like, so there is that double-edged sword when it comes to like the breadcrumbs that are left out, because if you miss a breadcrumb and the game doesn't steer you towards that breadcrumb hard enough, you can miss out on important mechanics in Breath of the Wild.
I agree with you. So there's an interesting thing to discuss there. Like even Baldur's Gate 3, which I started playing more of, I have a pretty crap. I don't know if I relayed this to you. I was like, oh, I'm going to play Baldur's Gate 3 when I have like a 12-hour plane ride to Taipei. And I was like, this is going to be a perfect amount of time. I played. You said
I'm going to finish it.
Yeah, so I played 4 hours in the air to Taipei, having the time of my life. My party wipes, and I did not save. So I just burned through 4 hours, and I just closed the lid on my WinMax 2, and I was like, I'm just going to sit here. I'm not going to do anything right now. That was really upsetting. But in the same vein as Baldur's Gate 3, that goblin camp that I went to that I got my party wiped at, like I was talking to someone about that, and someone was like, oh yeah, how I did that was I just put mud on my face and pretended I was a goblin, and my charisma check passed, and then I just poisoned all the food. And I was just like, I wouldn't have thought of that. And the point of what I'm trying to make here is like that double-edged sword is sometimes when you play games so much, you kind of put in tighter guardrails for yourself. You're like, well, the game isn't going to let me do something crazy like that. And not that Baldur's Gate 3 needs like 80 tutorials, but like, did you know you can do 70 million things right here? So there's a part there where I love exploring a game, and from the get-go, if it's not very gamey, it's like they put you in a position where Animal Well does it well, where they're like, here is a room, you have no other place to go, you have a bubble wand, certainly that should get somewhere. And it's like it minimizes how many options you have to help you figure out where you need to go. And I love that they've done that, and they keep on like iterating on that. So that's probably why I like Metroidvania so much, is that they have the avenue to like really hone in on what you need and why like early Legend of Zelda games are so fantastic and why I love them. You went to a dungeon, you got the boomerang. There was like tons of boomerangy things to do in that dungeon. You were like mainlining that boomerang and doing all the things and learning about the boomerang. So yeah, that's been a fun trip down. But typically, I like avoiding tutorials.
Yeah, like the way I always think about the boomerang in Zelda, like when you first get it, you're like, okay, this is really cool, but then like it's such a useful tool that it's almost always my default thing that I put on that. Unless I need to do something else, the boomerang's the thing that I'll have on that button. And by the end of the game, you feel like Neo in the Matrix, where you just throw the boomerang and then you're like, oh, I'm going to hit this guy and then I'm going to walk over here and let it hit somebody else on the way back, and it'll pick up a rupee or a fairy on the way, and then I'll get healed. Like, it's very satisfying gameplay, which, boy, I would really like to see some of those tools come back in future Zelda games. But that's the games that Carrie's been playing. I was just looking on Game Pass for something to play because I was loading up I wanted to play something that I haven't played recently on the ROG Ally X, and this is a Game Pass machine, Yep. I can run all of my Game Pass games, and I found a game on there that I think I'd heard of, but I never got around to playing, and I ended up texting it to Rich because it's a rich game. It's called Bolt Gun.
Oh, yes.
Have you played? Yeah, you've played it.
So good, dude. Like the feeling as a boomer shooter, but like and then the chain. Yeah, like how that whole feeling they nailed. I've been really enjoying Bolt Gun. I did not finish Bolt Gun, but that is totally a rich game of just boomer shooters, and they just really nailed the entire presentation and execution of that.
Anybody who hasn't played Bolt Gun, like they're hearing you and me talk about it right now, and the way that you described it didn't tell anybody anything. And it's like in the preview with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, where Ryan Reynolds is on the couch and he's like, "Hey Hugh, you want to play Wolverine again?" And then they turn off the audio and they're like acting out scenes from the. Do you know which preview I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's almost felt like a way to describe the game. So Bolt Gun, I believe it's in the Warhammer universe, right? Yeah. So it's in the Warhammer universe, and you've got like a melee attack that you can charge up by using the left trigger. Like you pull the trigger and time stops. You look at the guy you want to attack, and when you let go, your character charges forward and kills him. And then you also have, grenades that you can pick up, and you've got a gun that, the bolt gun, and almost, I feel like it just feels really good, and it's got like these retro aesthetics to it that it feels like the kind of game that you could have played back in the day, hence why it's a boomer shooter. I'm only like an hour in, but I'm really, really enjoying it. But then I had to wrap up my first impressions of the Ally X video, which I posted yesterday. So I didn't get too much time with it, but I'm definitely looking forward to playing some more of it. Right now, while we're recording, I'm currently installing a couple of games that I wanted to check out. I bought Celico based on Rich's recommendation.
Right, yeah.
And Wayfinder, I've heard good things about it. I've got it. It's just finished downloading, so that'll be something that I'll be playing very soon because I've heard really good things about that game. And I've been playing a little bit of Dudelings, but we'll talk about that later on in the show. All right. Any other things that we've been playing before we start talking about the ROG Ally X?
Nope.
All right. So the ROG Ally X, which is Asus's first, you met them?
Yeah.
How do you say it?
I say Asus.
You say Asus? Okay. Yeah. I was just curious because I never knew if I was saying it wrong or if it was Asus or Asus or Asus or whatever.
No, yeah, it's Asus. All right. Everyone else was saying that around me, so let's be all
fair
enough. Yeah.
So it's their follow-up to the ROG Ally, which came out last year, and obviously now it's concrete. They are treating these like laptops, where they're going to bring out a new thing every year, I believe. And sometimes it'll have a new chipset, which would bring different power, and sometimes it won't have a new chipset. The ROG Ally X, what's the same about it? It's got the same screen, which is great. Especially Carrie, you always talk about it's a native landscape screen. It also has the same chipset, but that is where the similarities end, because everything else about this is different. So, I just put out my video yesterday. You said that you're currently working on your video. Don't completely spoil your video, but what do you think about the changes to the ROG Ally X? Are they all good changes, or are there some things that you're not a fan of?
So no, if you look at all the things that I've always said about a handheld, and some things that I even asked Valve to do, everyone that makes a handheld is the thing that I'm saying, because I'm very much a form over function type of guy, and if you could put the kitchen sink, everything in, go hardcore engineering, that's what I care about. And Asus went in that direction for everything. It is crazy impressive, all of the little things that they have done. The battery from the old Ally is literally half the weight of the Ally X. And the Ally X is now most all of the weight that you feel, almost the 680 grams of it, is almost all battery. But they reduce the weight on everything else so that it doesn't feel heavy. And it's only 80 grams more heavier than the other one, but has 2 times the battery capacity. That's a triumph of engineering, number one.
In 1 year.
Yeah. To get to that point, they made the heatsink a bit smaller, so there's less actual material. The heat pipes are wider, so they're actually better. And the fans have, when they were going through it, they were, showing me everything. And I was like, why didn't you guys just do this first? If the fans weigh less, take less power, and are better, why wouldn't you just do that to begin with? And they were like, oh, money. And he was like, I was like, what? He's like, when we were looking we were looking at things that could reduce weight, and we saw the fans were taking up a good chunk of it. So we got our engineering team and we just threw money at them. And not only did they redesign the fans, so they're smaller fans but with more blades, they actually have more output of air. But if you take a look at the middle exhaust port on the Ally at the top, that's not a third fan. That's just 2 fans, but they have in the fan housing itself, there's a duct that pops out from the bottom on both of them that redirects some of the air through the center channel. So you have 3 exhausts for two fans, and that cools off the panel and the center part of it, which some people complained about because they're like, oh, when I touch the screen, it's a little bit warm. I never cared about that.
I never noticed that.
But that was a side benefit of them redesigning the whole fan stuff. They're like, oh, we might as well just take care of that as well. The end result is that it's lighter, better.
It's not lighter.
The fans.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, the fans themselves are lighter than the previous ones, so they're lighter and better. It's how do you get those wins, right? Usually it's right. You have to make compromises, but no, they got a clear win across the board on that. So now that's cooler. I still have to check that part, so I still have to vet that whole part, and that's thankfully I have a month to do that. But you look at that, the battery, the increase of the casing to accommodate the bigger battery is now better ergonomics. The analog sticks, on the bottom of the analog stick, there is a screw that you can actually undo and then make your own tops. You can swap out the entire thing. The back plate that they made it so, because they looked at the modding community and saw the stuff that everyone was doing. So they were just like, all right, let's embrace this. So let's make it so that the macro buttons that are on the back, that they could be adapted to whatever back panel you want. But the only problem is now when you disassemble it, there's a ribbon cable that you need to basically undo, because you can rip that off if you pull it off. If you rip it off, then the macro buttons don't work. I don't use them anyway, so I don't think I would really care. But for people that want that and have different stuff, that's super awesome. The face buttons have been redesigned a bit, so they're got a bit more height to them now and a little bit more presence. It's just the D-pad has been changed. I haven't really
D-pad's a huge improvement.
so I haven't really played with the D-pad all that much. I've been just using the analog sticks. I still like the analog sticks. The panel is the same, but the panel is still one of the better panels you can get for a handheld. So it's just a super ally. That's all it is. They basically took an ally and said, let's make everything else better. It's they really did an engineering marvel to like look at everything.
Yeah, it's really, really impressive what they've done with this. It's as far as like this is now my second favorite handheld PC. Of course, that might change after I use it some more. My first is still the OLED Steam Deck, and you know why? The comfort.
Right.
It's really like it's comfort more than anything else because like the handles on this are way better than they were on the ROG Ally, but they're still not as big as I want. That being said, I mean, if they made them the same size as the Steam Deck, this thing would be massive because this thing is thick because of that big 80-watt-hour battery that's in it. This thing is really, really thick. If you set this next to a Steam Deck on the table, they're roughly the same height.
Right. Even
though the Steam Deck has much longer handles coming down. So I still think that this is a huge improvement over the ROG Ally. I feel like this leapfrogs the Legion Go, but the one thing that I like about the Legion Go over this is the ability to use Windows easily on the Legion Go, just because the touch targets are so much bigger. Because a lot of times you get some stupid Windows pop up because they're constantly happening. And then I'm like, oh, no, I missed. Hold on. Oh, hold on. Okay, I got it that time. And like that's the kind of thing that is kind of frustrating. But then I feel like Armory Crate has come so far. Have you done the BIOS update and installed the new Armory Crate on yours yet?
I have, yeah. So I'm all up to date like you are. I did find something that was kind of kludgy, and I'll have to like mention it. I should probably just talk about it first, but I always use I always switch to desktop mode so that I use the analog sticks as the emulated mouse because I hate using the touchscreen for anything. But
yeah, I don't like it either.
They do Asus by default does everything on the right hand, which I don't like. So you use the right thumbstick to move the cursor around, your right index finger for left click, right middle finger for left click. So you're doing R2 for right click, R1 for right click, left click. It just feels weird. So I just want left click over here, right click over here, and I move the mouse with the left one. So I was like, okay, you can modify that. You can customize it in Asus Armory Crate. However, when I was doing it, it was swapping between both of them. Like,
oh no.
Yeah, so I was moving with my left and then the mouse would stop. And then I would move the right analog stick and then that would pick up. So it was like dual brain for a little, and I was like, why is this happening? So I just reset the configuration because the only way that the mouse mode will always work at all times in desktop mode for Armory Crate is that way. So I've just been getting used to using it that way, even though I prefer to change it, which you can, but right now it feels like it's like whiplash between the two.
I don't know why, but every once in a while, especially if I have Steam up, mouse like using the joystick to move the mouse around will just stop working.
Yeah,
and I'm like, what did I do wrong? I can't figure out. It's like because sometimes it works fine, and then other times it just stops, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? And I can't figure it out. Do you know what I'm doing wrong?
Only if you have auto mode on. If you have auto mode on and it detects any game API, it'll disconnect the mouse and go over to gamepad mode. So OpenGL, DirectX, anything, literally any game type of thing, it goes, oh, a game's playing. Stop the mouse. So I forcefully go to desktop mode when I bring up the quick access menu. So I just push desktop mode. I don't use auto. Auto is, you'll get that herky-jerky stuff.
Yeah. Continuing on talking about Armory Crate, one of the things that I like is they brought in, if I can bring it up on screen, they brought in all of the all of the AMD stuff that you used to have to you used to have to go into. I'm trying to do it while I'm sitting here talking.
The Radeon control
I don't
panel.
remember. Yeah, the Radeon control panel is now like built in.
To
I just don't
Armory Crate,
remember where the hell it is. And that's so much better than booting up the AMD software and then using the stupid touchscreen. It's just much, much better. I can't remember where it is in here. Maybe it's under general. Nah, it doesn't matter. I don't need to show it on screen. People will know what I mean by that. But basically allows you to turn on, like their anti-lag stuff,
Right.
or RSR, or fluid motion frames. Although I used fluid motion frames and I really didn't like the results, but that was on the first one. I don't know if it's going to be any better on the second one. I don't think so.
It doesn't really have enough horsepower for AFMF to really work well enough. How AFMF is implemented, I'm not the biggest fan of. Like AFMF will just disable itself at random times. Not random times. It disables itself at smart moments, but the moments that you would feel it get disabled, like if there's blur in a game or you're moving around, it's like, oh, disable it because you don't want these weird frames because it'll look all messed up. So it goes back to like this weird feeling of like, is this really better frames? And you just have like a weird feeling of it. The lossless scaling frame generation is always on and does whatever is getting output to Windows Desktop Manager. This is a separate application, but the newest version that they have is really good. What's funny is because it's trying to compute whatever the next frame is, I always usually have my HUD up, right? So you can see like CPU package power, frame rate, and all that other stuff. What's funny is when you're moving around, you can see that trailing a bit. Like it's like, oh, this has to move down a little bit. Like, so you can actually see it physically working. Which is cool. But those types of technologies are still not the best. Not yet.
Not yet. I think that those are going to be the future.
Yeah.
Of like, I think we're basically, I don't want to say that we're at a wall, but we've kind of hit a speed bump. I feel like where when you move forward a generation, you look back. It used to be you'd look back and you'd be like, holy cow! Remember when we thought that looked nice? And now you're like, this could have been on the last set of systems. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like all of that is going to force frame generation and upscaling to the forefront to make it so that they can make games run at low resolutions and then use some kind of weirdo upscaling magic to make them look amazing. And we're going to be like, okay, well, that's like the amount of power that you're going to need for modern games is going to keep. I think it's going to stay the same.
Right.
It's going to basically level off. You're not going to need even more power. Maybe someday you won't need as much of an increase in power because it'll be more leveled off. But there's going to be a lot of things happening in the background that's based on frame generation and upscaling and stuff like that.
Yeah, we feel it the worst on handhelds because we're so constrained by power, whereas for the past 10 years getting an increase in performance has been increasing power. Everything, like it used to be that a CPU would take 50 watts and now they take 200. So it's a 4x gain in power consumption just to get however much double the performance, and that's just the new normal. But in a handheld, you could have 5 minutes of battery life. It's just no one would want that. So that's really what we feel at the worst. And since I've been so focused on it all the time, it's always been very, very apparent whenever they made advances. It's like, you just sold the same thing. You're just bumping clocks. I can't bump a clock because it'll waste battery life. So that's always been the thing. And we've always been behind the eight ball, largely always behind because of GPU. We've always wanted more GPU.
Yeah. So, we look at the ROG Ally X, not the Ally 2, not the Steam Deck 2, it's the Steam Deck OLED, not the Legion Go 2, it's the Legion Go Mini or the Legion Go Lite, that rumor.
Right.
These aren't going to be big improvements in performance. It's going to be bigger improvements in battery life and that kind of thing. But you just put out a video, and I looked, it's doing very well. Your video about the Snapdragon, not Snackdragon. That would be a cool chip. The Snackdragon. The Snapdragon X
Elite.
Elite, thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I was conflating two things with that.
No.
The Snapdragon X Elite, and I need to mute my computer. Do you think you've played games on the Snapdragon X Elite?
Yeah.
Do you think that that is going to be something that we're going to be seeing in handhelds soon, or is it going to be quite a while?
You know what's funny is Qualcomm doesn't have a horse in that race, but NVIDIA does. Because NVIDIA has the crown jewels for GPUs. So if NVIDIA had the CPUs that are in the Snapdragon X Elite are very good. They're not bad. Like, they're between power consumption wise and performance wise, they're between a Zen 3 and a Zen 4 on AMD, generally speaking. So that's very good. That's what we have today, and we're all happy with that. So that's all fine. It's really the GPU on the Snapdragon X Elite that really lets everyone down. It's a very, very poor GPU. So if people wanted to use ARM in a handheld, NVIDIA would honestly be the best bet. Now, will Windows on ARM ever work with NVIDIA to create something like that? Who knows? They've only ever worked with Qualcomm, and they've never opened it up. Like, we've never been able to use MediaTek or other stuff for Windows on ARM. It's only ever been Qualcomm. So who knows with what goes on there, but generally speaking, the emulation side that they have there is fairly impressive considering what's going on.
Yeah.
The CPU side, we got tons of it, but the real problem here is that it's not really saving us any power. AMD, in terms of game performance, we're doubling performance inside the same power scope. So what does ARM really benefit us for in Windows on ARM at all? And the reality is that x86, AMD's x86 especially, and even new Intel's Lunar Lake, all of these, the architecture never mattered. And it really is, Apple did such an amazing job on the M1 that it altered perceptions forever. When everyone saw the M1, there's a few things that were going on there. Number one, Apple was the first one to that new node. They were the only ones there. So not only they had a node generational improvement a year ahead of everyone else. So for all intents and purposes, when Apple released the M1 in 2020, that's a chip that no one could compete with until like mid 2021. So they were ahead of the competition by a year and a half just node wise. Then the chip that they designed, they went min-max everywhere. That's an engineer's delight right there. No one from Apple business said, you know what, don't do that because we want to sell them the next model. No one said that.
Right. That's the reason that their graphs for the M3 were comparing it to the M1.
Yeah.
Because like going from the M1 to the M2 wasn't that big a leap.
Yeah.
It was more powerful.
But yeah.
But it was so good. The M1s were so friggin' good that the M2s were just like, well, why wouldn't I just stick with an M1?
Exactly.
And so when the M3s came out, they didn't compare them to the M2, they compared them to the M1s.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a problem that Apple created for themselves, whether they knew it or not, by letting engineers like fully go all out. And they're like, oh, what can we do to make everything absolutely perfect? Because it's not like it was an engineering like magic that only they could do. They just didn't have any breaks. And the result is everyone that has an M1 has no real reason to upgrade any of their machines, which is a problem for Apple if they want to sell new stuff. But that's basically that's the problem, is Apple made something so fantastic that they said, oh, ARM is that fantastic. It's ARM that's doing it. Not that the engineers did such a fantastic job and had the best node available at the time, which gets conflated. So when you see the Snapdragon X Elite and you're like, no, actually, x86 can indeed be low power efficient. It just needs to be designed that way. And that's really all that ever comes down to. The ISA doesn't matter. It's really about implementation.
Well, there you have it. Speaking of implementation and sticking with the ROG Ally, there was a live stream over at ROG Pulse, which is it's like their podcast, and they finally responded. I mean, it's over a year now.
Yeah.
They finally responded about the SD card issues, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but I will leave a link in the description so people can go watch the live stream and get it directly from the horse's mouth. But here's what they said. They said that whenever you're making a lot of things, sometimes you're going to use this board, sometimes you're going to use that board, and it's just who'd you buy the parts from, right? And what they noticed was that board X, well, we'll say board A instead of X. Board A was having this SD card issue. Board B was not. So it was something to do with that board. And so they said, okay, well, people are positing that maybe it's a heat issue. So they said, let's change the fan curves and see if that changes or gives us a drop in the number of failures that we're seeing. They did the fan curves, and it did not reduce the number of failures that they were seeing. So it turns out that it didn't have anything to do with the heat, but even though that's what everybody thought it was, they then found out that if they increased the supply of power to the board that was having an issue so that it was a more consistent supply of power, it reduced the number of failures that they were getting. This did end up impacting reducing failure rates. And I've seen some people out there say it had something to do with the fuse that was on there. I don't know if that's the case or not. That seems kind of like what they're saying here. So then they said, here's what we're going to do moving forward. We've extended the warranty on every ROG Ally out to 2 years. And if you have an SD card issue and you send it in, that will be covered. We'll talk about whether or not that's worth, them saying or not in a bit. But if you send it in, they'll always replace the board with the one that they know wasn't having an issue. So they won't use board A, they'll throw board B in there, and that should solve the problem and move on. And then they apologized for not being transparent about it, which is good. That they should apologize, because they were way too quiet about it for way too long. And some people might say, well, they were being quiet about it because they were trying to figure out what the issue is. But what they should do is say, we're trying to figure out what the issue is, not sit there and be silent, because that breeds like you're trying to hide something from me and I don't like it. And that's what it felt like. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people didn't want to touch the ROG Ally, because of all of the consternation about that SD card port. I never put an SD card in my ROG Ally because I was afraid it would ruin the card and I didn't want to buy another one. And I know you have your rule about $50 cards or whatever, but I bought a more expensive card and I didn't want to risk it. So I didn't put it in there. Before we get to the warranty issues, holy cow, you're blowing up, man. Everything okay?
Sorry about that. Yeah, go ahead. I'll mute myself.
That's okay. Oh, okay. Before we get to the warranty issues, my question for you is, do you feel like them coming out and saying this now, warranty issue, like RMA process aside, do you feel like this is now resolved?
Yeah, so I do think that they, especially on the Ally X, this one of the nice things about having a month to go through it is I am going to run exclusively off the SD card for this entire month.
Okay.
So I'm going to run that and, put them to task on that. Here's the deal, though. I've always used the SD card on my old Ally, and I'd never had a failure. And I did that for months. So as a part of my testing that I do, I load up all my Steam games on an SD card, so whenever I get a new device in, I just pop that in without having to download anything, and then I just run them off. God,
I should do that.
Yeah, so I just set SD card to better performance policy in Windows, so that I don't get any weird speed issues. But everything runs fine, and for my testing, it works fine. Once the game loads, I just need to test how the performance is. So I've always run off an SD card, and I never had an issue. So I'm going to do that again, but I think that they had a handle on what was going wrong, and they redesigned the motherboard, obviously, on the Ally X. It supports 2280 cards. Like, the entire thing has been redistributed. So where everything is changed. So I, at the moment, think that there is going to be no issues on the SD card for the Ally X. With regard, just generally speaking, the problem for you and I especially, and all the other like reviewers for anything Asus, is that we have to like couch all of our things that we're talking about inside of the warranty is probably going to suck. Like, you can't get excited about it, even though the Ally X, like all the engineering stuff that they did, I want to geek out about it. But then you feel like, like, oh crap, I got to rein this in, because if I seem like I'm too excited, how do we? It sucks that you can't fully be like, just like, oh, this is great. You have to like say, oh, you know what, who knows what's going to go on with the warranty, and that's not our fault, but it's a problem for us and everyone when you have to wait for Asus to now re-earn all that trust that they lost. Well, Gamers Next, that Gamers Nexus video like really catapulted things, but even before then, with the SD card issue, they had this looming problem, and I feel like it was I want to say powder keg, a powder keg that's like ready to ignite, and once that video came out, it just exploded, and now they have to rebuild the entire building of trust that they have with everyone. So it's an overall problem, and it's unfortunate, especially with the timing of the Ally X, where how everything came out. But it needs to be said, and we'll have to wait and see what happens over the course of time, and hopefully they make right.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to see the Gamers Nexus Computex video?
I did. Yes.
Okay. So, like, he held their feet to the fire. He was able to extract some pretty significant promises out of them. Do you feel like, obviously we can't predict whether or not they're going to follow through with that, but having high-level executives promise to do stuff on camera, I think that that's a fairly significant thing, and it shows that Asus is taking it very seriously.
Yeah, so I'm optimistic that they're going to do it, but we can't just be like, oh, good, that's solved. We all have to put them to task to it, and hopefully they pull through and become a shining example of how a warranty process should be. And
I would like to see that as well.
Yeah.
What I don't want to do is I don't want to have to bring it up every single time I make a video. Like, I was thinking, you know what? The new Armory Crate stuff is pretty cool. I might do like a tutorial video going through all the different things you can do in Armory Crate. And, I got to make sure I talk about warranty information, even though I'm talking about software. Yeah. And I'm like, ugh. It kind of sucks the fun.
It does.
Out of making the videos where I have to, let me jump into a negative thing. People are always... I think a lot of people they get down on people who have YouTube channels, and they say, you never say anything bad. If I have something bad to say, I usually won't make a video about a thing. I don't want to make a video shitting all over somebody's product.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's not enjoyable to me. If I have to choose, I only have so much time. If I have to choose between making a video about something that I'm excited about or something that I'm disappointed in, I'm going to do the video about the thing that's exciting to me, because that's more fun. Yeah. Somebody might say, well, that's not what you should do. You should do it because whatever. I'm not a journalist. Right. I'm not a journalist. That's for journalists to do.
You know what? Even still, I think even when you're having the conversation, and I've pointed this out, some people have, like, oh, you should talk about X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, I talk about X, Y, and Z all the time. Look at XYZ Discord. Look at all my receipts. Search for me and look with me. You can see everything that I'm saying. This is bad. They need to fix that. They need to do that. And they're like, yeah, but you didn't make a video about it. And I'm like, so I have to make a video about a thing that I've already said. Like, unless I do a video, it's not official. And that's the thing that always gets me. But yeah, that's a YouTuber thing that we just jumped into. But
we did.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's still like, I don't want, it's a weird thing to talk about, but it is the right thing to talk about at the same time. And truthfully, like, I would hate to be in Gamers Nexus's position, right? Because that's super awkward. Like, I don't like the confrontational part of it. Like, oh, this and that, and like,
it made me uncomfortable watching it.
Yeah, like you like, oh. Like, all the people there, and they have the guy like on a webcam talking because he wasn't happy with the other guy talking, which good for Steve to like do that. But that's like uncomfortable for everyone. That's uncomfortable for him. That's uncomfortable for them. The entire situation is uncomfortable, not something that I'm envious of that what he had to do, but I'm grateful that he did it. And I think that, in terms of like just showing my support with what he did, I am totally fine with like always talking about it, because being mindful and putting them to task is something that I think, I'll join in wherever I can. Where it's not going to be as much.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about the Nintendo Direct. Okay, the Nintendo Direct was last week, and I have to say that we had a whole week to really come to grips with what Sony said at their presentation. Then we had a whole week to come to grips with what Microsoft said at their presentation, and then Nintendo came in after the fact. Everybody just kind of thought everything was over, and then Nintendo comes in and they have their Nintendo Direct. And how do you feel about the way that Summer Game Fest has taken all of the E3 stuff that we used to see all in 1 week and spread it out? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I feel like previous E3s were also like that. There was like the pre-conferences and stuff, but then it was almost reverse order, right? Summer Games Fest is like the back end of what E3 used to be, and then we go into like the conferences and stuff, where it used to be conferences first and then the back end stuff, where we'd still get more information from like the third party, like Capcom, Ubisoft, EA, all those guys is where we'd start to get them from. And now you see them kind of like banding together a little bit. Like Nintendo, Capcom was very heavy in the Nintendo conference this time, so there's a lot of stuff going on with Capcom, so they kind of like banded together with Nintendo there. So I'm still glad that we still have this non E3, which a lot of people are saying. I'm glad that it still exists, because I this is like one of the parts of the times of like June that I always look forward to, and I'm glad that it still exists in the same kind of time slot.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that it's more spread out though, because
right.
There were many times in the past where there's so many announcements happening during E3,
right,
that some of them just get forgotten about. And I felt like this year, because everything was spread out over the course of 3 or more weeks,
right,
I felt
instead
like
of 1 week.
Instead of 1 week, I could kind of get a handle around everything.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit easier. But the Nintendo Direct, boy, it was big. Like, there was a lot of stuff in there, and I think that there was absolutely something in there for everyone. Now, we have our private Discord, and I said, outside of this and this, I felt it was a little meh. And then you were like, well, what about this? And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And well, what about this? And I forgot about that too. So no, I think my initial reaction was, I was excited about certain things, and everything else I was kind of, whatever. But overall, I think that this was a really good Direct, and probably one of the best Directs that they've had in a long time, especially when it comes to surprises.
Right, yeah. Yeah, for sure. This is there was a bunch of things that I really liked what they were showing there. Some of the stuff that the Legend of Zelda, what is it called? What Zelda in it now?
Echoes of Wisdom.
I love that they took whatever the team did to remake Link's Awakening and then make something new with it, and they still put it into the Link to the Past kind of world. Like, as they're going through, I'm like, that's Link to the Past. Oh, that's Link to the Past. And when you're going through it, how they were like the mechanism for like going through, and her wand can like replicate stuff. It looks cool. There's a very puzzly. It's a very puzzly Zelda. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that kind of culminates, because it seems like how they're looking at Zelda herself is not so much she goes in guns a-blazing. She goes in to think about a problem to solve combat.
Right.
So that's how you're doing. You're like, oh, there's what's a name? So I'll just put this over here to have that person fight for me, or have the thing fight for me. So it's really about thinking about combat versus entering into combat. So I like the direction that they're going with, and how they pivot some certain things, even from the trailer that we could see, because it's only revealing so much, but you get a specific flavor for it, and it still feels very inside that Zelda thing, more than like Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes or whatever, where it's like the multiplayer spin-off of Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
It's Legend of Zelda, but it's just like quirky and whatever multiplayer.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the Zelda game. Let's take a look at the release dates for everything that's coming out. I'm bringing up Game Rant. They went through and they found everything basically. So, in June. Oh, and we just. Oh, okay. There you are. You vanished for a second. In June. Okay, you know what? I cannot actually look at this. This is so many games. Holy cow. So this Game Rant article is not just the games that were announced. It's every game that's coming out for the rest of the year on Nintendo Switch. And I clicked, I was like, oh, okay, let's see what games were announced. And it's just everything's there. So, all right, change of plans. We talked about Zelda. Did you play A Link Between Worlds?
Yes. Yeah, I loved it.
Okay, yeah, it was absolutely amazing. It was a direct sequel. It felt like to A Link to the Past, and then we had A Link Between Worlds. I've heard some people say that the Link that's in Link's Awakening is the same Link from A Link to the Past. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not an expert on Zelda lore. That being said, this is clearly in that same world, and now, I mean, you even look and Zelda's trapped in a crystal,
right?
Just like she is
Link to the Past,
in Link to the Past. So, like, this feels like an alternative universe, but it's that same world, and it's the world that I'm probably the most familiar with,
right?
Because I've played A Link to the Past a billion times, and A Link Between Worlds was really, really good.
Yep.
I'm very excited to get back to this world. And you mentioned the puzzles. This feels like they looked at Breath of the Wild.
Right.
And they said, you know how in Breath of the Wild you get all your abilities right at the beginning?
Yeah.
That's the new Zelda. Like, in A Link Between Worlds, you got all of the stuff right at the beginning. You just picked, well, I'm going to rent this thing from the guy stealing my house.
Right.
And I'll go to this dungeon, you know? Zelda doesn't, like, it feels like they are moving away from the idea where there's these powers that you gain by going and defeating a challenge, and instead they're saying you get all of your powers at the beginning and you can do whatever the hell you want. It's always been kind of sandboxy, but it made it more sandboxy. And I'm curious, do you like that, or do you wish for, you know, I got to go to the water temple to get the ice wand or something?
So Nintendo is always that way, right? They always try to spark joy or do something different, give it a new flavor profile, right? So that's something that they are known for and something that they always do. I do really enjoy the traditional Zelda, and the only reason I like that is because at its core, Legend of Zelda is very Metroidvania-y. Like, in Metroid games, you need to, like, oh, I can't go over there. I need a double jump. Let me go get the double jump ability. So then you go get that, and then you explore more things. And Legend of Zelda always had that same type of thing. You were kind of locked off from exploring the entire world until you went and got the stuff to then be able to traverse that type of stuff. So I love Metroidvania games because I like that exploration feature that they have. Having said that, I really liked Link Between the Worlds, even though I was like, oh, okay, that's a little interesting. They had some different stuff, but then, you know, morphing into the wall or whatever, and then, like, walking around. There's some cool things, like, that you could do there, and then there was more story-wise stuff that leads on to. So, I still prefer traditional Zelda stuff at my core. I don't mind it. I feel like, and this is something that I tweeted out, there's tweets that I do that I am totally not serious about, but a lot of people took it seriously. I put Tears of the Kingdom was not a Zelda game, and some people were like really upset about that. When the difference between Breath of the Wild, which I do consider very much a Legend of Zelda game, and Tears of the Kingdom, which I don't, is that if you make the umbrella of choices to solve something too wide, then that's where things get really muddy. And that's where my delineation of what I like classify as a Zelda game. We have long left the traditional Zelda thing. You are absolutely correct. Since Link Between Worlds, they've started going away from that by just saying, here's your tools at the beginning. They've started doing that and they've kept on going. So they're more exploring in that area. But I still feel like the passage through a puzzle should still be narrow, because that joy that happens through a very specific puzzle is what I've always loved about Zelda. The fanfare that happens when you discover something with I solved that exactly as it was meant to be solved. Not I solved that by just like gluing together a bunch of sticks and then running across the sticks. That's the difference that I have for a Zelda game, insofar as the puzzles.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that it's almost, we talked early in the show, we talked about this idea of you get into a room and you only have one solution, and like that's how you force the player to learn what you want them to learn. And in the new types of Zelda games, it's more let the player figure out how they want to solve it. And if the player, and I'm going to say something that I think some people are going to take issue with, if the player is solving every puzzle by gluing sticks together, then that's the player's fault.
Sure.
Like they're not thinking creatively.
Right.
And I personally like the way that current Zelda games are, that allow me to solve this puzzle in the weirdest freaking way that I can come up with. And then I could show it to somebody and be like, here's how I did it. And they're like, holy cow, no way I would have thought of that. Or somebody else can show me how they did it. And I was like, wait a second, you could do that? And that's the thing that makes Zelda feel like it did when I was a kid. Because the original Zelda, like you walk into this room and you're like, you just burn a bush and it opens up, there's a dungeon under there and you're like, holy cow. And then you go to school the next day and you told your friends, hey, if you go left from the start and you find, you go left 2 screens up, 3 screens over 1 screen or whatever, I don't know. And then you burn the 4th bush in or something, you're going to find a secret place. And then you think about that all day and you go home that night and you try it. And then you go back the next day and you talk about it. And I feel like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they excelled at that. They excelled at that, figuring out a weird way to accomplish a task and then sharing that. And then the reaction that you always got, which was, I can't believe that you can do that in this game. That's really cool. And I always thought that was awesome. But we've kind of veered away from the Nintendo Direct. So I'm gonna try and pull us back in, and we'll talk about another big game that was announced. Mario and Luigi Brothership. A, terrible name. B, Mario and Luigi games. Do you enjoy those games, Carrie?
I have not played any of them more than 10 minutes. So no.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean the ones that I have played are very RPG like.
Yeah, they're RPGs.
Yeah, so just turn-based ones. So no, I play them a bit. They're charming, but then they don't pull me in fast enough, and they lose me in like 10 or 15 minutes. I never see that. I never stick with them. It's like, okay, yeah, it's like, okay, turn-based. Oh, okay.
There's a lot of chatter.
Yeah, dude. When there's just like way too much like text boxes, and they won't let me go. Like, okay, go. Let me enjoy the game first, and then if I like the game, then give me the lore, or let me explore the lore. But if you just like, here's the story, and I'm just like, I'll just go.
I don't know if that's something that came with getting old, but my patience for video games talking to me in the beginning of the game has waned a lot.
Oh,
like
big time.
I'm sitting there and I'll be playing a game and I'll be like, yeah. Will you just shut the hell up so I can figure out how the game works and talk to me in a half an hour.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me right now. Let me figure things out instead of constantly interrupting with backstory and lore. And listen, game developers are allowed to make the game that they want to make, and I don't have to like it, and that's perfectly fine. But if I'm going to play your game, I need you to just give me some time to figure out how things work before you throw 1,300 different characters at me and their backstories and everything about it.
Yeah, the again, that's like the whole tutorial thing. It has gotten, for what it's worth, it has gotten worse. Only because gaming has gotten wider. There's more people playing games. And since more people playing games, it's not just the hardcore playing anymore who know how to play games. They started padding all of this, like, press A to jump. I don't know what the A button means. That's weird. And it's like, oh, God, yeah, I get it. All right. Like, that's such a... Why are you wasting my time? But they have...
Yeah.
It has gotten worse. It's not just us.
Well, maybe it is just us. Let us know in the comments down below if you think that Carrie and I are full of beans and you want all that lore front-loaded. Mario and Luigi Brothership looks great. I don't know that I'm going to buy it. If it comes... I mean, Nintendo games don't really go on sale. No. But maybe if they got a demo, Nintendo, put this on a demo. And if it's good, then I'll buy it. But I'm probably not going to buy this. Even though I have enjoyed those games in the past, there's just so much chatter. And it gets old real fast. I will say, they look really cool.
Yeah.
Like they have taken the Mario and Luigi characters and they look more modern than I feel like that they've ever looked in this trailer. And it's just really awesome looking. All right, let's get away from that and get to something that I think that we're both excited for, that I didn't go out and buy the physical version. I think that you did. Nintendo World Championship NES edition. You bought the physical version, right?
Yeah, I bought the collector's edition one, yeah.
Right, that's what I mean, yeah. Talk about this. Why did you run out and get the collector's edition for it?
Oh, I collect physical Switch games, so I'm going to buy the Brotherhood game, as Brothership game as well, even though I don't really... I'll wait for it to be $40. But that's like number one. The number one reason that I bought it is because I do that. The number two reason is, but I do like the direction that they were going in that, especially how all the speedrunning parts of it are and the leaderboard parts of it are. There's parts there that there's some part of old me that was competitive, like super competitive in games, where like, oh yeah, I can be on that leaderboard somewhere. But then there's the part of me that's like, I'm not going to devote my life to that. There's no way I'm going to even be anywhere in that leaderboard. I still like the idea of how they take older things, like the NES remix type of stuff. I like that type of stuff. So generally speaking, when they put a spin on an old thing, I'm there for it.
Yeah, same. I think that this looks really fun, and I am absolutely going to buy it. I didn't buy the physical version because even though the physical version looks awesome, comes with like a gold Nintendo Entertainment System cartridge and that kind of stuff, it looks fantastic. I want less
stuff.
I want less shit in this room. I want less stuff. This room is full of stuff. Like if you look over here, you can't see it probably because my mic's in the way, but I've got like 1,000 things on the table over here next to me, and I've just got too much stuff in here, so I'm done buying physical things if I can avoid it. So I'm going to get this on digital. It comes out on July 18th, which is not very far away. I'm scrolling through Memories in Orbit. Did you take a look at that one?
No, I didn't.
So it's a Metroidvania. So I know that you dig Metroidvanias. It looks like a cross between hand-drawn and 3D rendered. And it looks really, really good. Very reminiscent of... What's the one that everybody's constantly asking for and then it doesn't come out with the Hornet guy?
Oh, this is Silksong.
Silksong, yeah. It looks very reminiscent of Silksong, if you ask me. This looks really cool, where the combat is the way that you traverse, and it just looks really nice. I'm looking forward to this one, but you don't have any opinion on this one? You just didn't jump out at you as you were watching the direct?
I don't know if there's a thing where on paper something sounds cool. You ever see that game? Like, you ever see games that are like all hand drawn, like they're actually hand drawn, scanned in, and then you have like a bunch of hand drawn stuff. And in game form, I just don't really like that. And there's like, it looks great and it looks fine. It's just that there's a part of it where I am indifferent to. When I look at it, I go, oh, okay. There was no part of that where I saw one part that clicked with me, and I was just like, oh, okay, it just existed in me. I'm indifferent to it. I don't have an opinion one way or the other, really.
Well, before we get to Metroid, are there games that were in the Direct that you were excited about?
Oh, so the one is from Square Enix, Squeenix. It's Dragon Quest 3, the 2D HD one. That
and 1 and 2.
Yeah, and 1 and 2. I am such a huge fan of what they did with Octopath Traveler and how that has stuck and struck a chord with people, because I think it's largely, I mean, I want to say that our age group is someone that is like, oh, sick. Like, this is if the 16-bit era just kept going type of thing. I love the look of it. How Octopath Traveler actually plays when you're doing the turn-based. I adore it. So I seen when I was watching it, it's like, oh man, this is great. But then someone did a before and after, like where it was like last year versus now. They've changed the game completely in terms of.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's like night and day. The one from a year ago looks more like Octopath Traveler, and like you can see, like there's a very tile-y type of mindset. It's like, okay, this is a square, and we put like vases here, and we'll just layer vases down this brick thing. And then in the newer one, the vases are still there, but now they're like columns that are like outside of this tile-based structure, and there's like way more depth. And there's like, you can see shadows from some like fanfare stuff that was just hanging down. So there's like, you see a bunch more stuff, and it does look better. But at the same time, I'm like, I hope these guys don't go too far, because one of the benefits for me, especially for Square Enix, is that they have seemed like they were behind the eight ball a lot. Like, they'd be putting up all this money to develop a game, and then like, oh, how much we sold there didn't really pan out as much as we thought it would. And I was like, okay, guys, you should probably pull back like how much you're spending on games. Octopath Traveler seems like, it doesn't cost you guys that much, and people like them, and you can recoup the money in a good way. Like, have a nice balance here, guys. Like don't. They seem like they're pushing further and further into making that look better. And the worry for me is like, man, you guys like had something there, and now you're once again spending a bunch of game dev time on something that you shouldn't. It looks fine. I'm still excited for it. But yeah, overall, I'm just a big fan of 2D HD 2D JRPGs. I love them tremendously. If they made a 2D HD Chrono Trigger, I would be flipping it. I would.
Yeah, I would buy that in a heartbeat, because I've played the beginning of Chrono Trigger a bunch of times.
Oh, okay.
And then I just kind of get distracted because it's a retro game, and I always think, well, I can get back to it, but I never end up getting back to it. But if there was a new version made and it was HD 2D, that would probably hold my attention a little bit longer, and I might be able to get over that initial hump of starting the game over for the 1000th time. I would love to see that. I would also like to see Final Fantasy VI remade in that way, or Final Fantasy 3, depending on who you talk to. Just because that's another game that I've played the beginning a bunch of and never followed through. I almost think like maybe I need the shiny whiz bang HD 2D stuff to keep my attention from waning. Also, there's a lot of chatter in the beginning of those games, and that does slow things down quite a bit. Yeah. Well, this is not HD 2D, but it's definitely 2D, and it's definitely exciting. Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics. I had Marvel vs. Capcom, I think it was 2 on the Dreamcast. I think that's the one it was. I had that, and I played that game so much. I used to work at our local ISP, and this is back in the days of dial-up. And I would be on the overnight shift.
1 second.
So what I would...
Hold that thought. 1 second.
I don't know what he's doing, but I think he's going to go grab a Dreamcast and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And while I was talking, he was kind of looking off to the side. So I think that it's possible that he was like bringing up a spreadsheet to find out which room he had Marvel vs. Capcom 2 stored in. And that's where he went.
I'm back.
Welcome
You're
back.
talking about dial-up stuff. I just wanted to show. I had the import of Sega Saturn.
Oh, wow.
And then also PS1. These were. There was an import shop near me when I was growing up, and I always used to buy them. I had like a mod chip and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. When you said it,
I
was like, wait, I had Marvel for something for those. So I was like looking at my little shelf.
Which game is that though?
This one is Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter.
Okay, which is included in the collection.
Yeah, this is Sega Saturn. This is the Japanese version. I'm pretty sure I had the Dreamcast version as well. It's over there. But yeah, while you were talking, I was like, oh, let me just show that off. I have it.
Very cool. So I was working at our local ISP, and at night, somebody had to be in the room. Somebody had to be there to answer phones in case somebody was trying to use the internet and the internet wasn't working. Mm-hmm. And so that was me. I worked there overnight all by myself, and almost nobody called because everybody was asleep, you know?
Sweet gig.
So I would bring my Dreamcast to work, and I think, if I remember correctly, the Dreamcast could hook up to a computer monitor, and it didn't have to hook up to a TV.
It did have.
That was one of the advantages.
Yeah, it did have
advantages of it. So I brought that in, and I would play Marvel vs. Capcom at night, and I love that game. And up until now, there hasn't been a good way for us to buy these Marvel vs. Capcom games because of licensing issues. Well, that's all over because now we've got the whole collection. It says 7 whole games in this collection, and this is going to be a day one buy for me. This is one where part of me says I should probably buy a physical version just because I know that licensing issues might crop up and it'll vanish from stores. But I also want to play it on PC, so I may end up buying it twice, like once just so I can have a physical version to preserve, and then another just so I can have it on whatever handheld PC I happen to be playing at the time. Are you hyped for Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics?
I'm pretty sure I had this conversation. I may have did it, but fun fact real quick. Chinatown Fair, one of the big fighting game community arcades that existed in New York City on Mott Street in Chinatown. I went there. I go there all the time, every Easter. When I went there, I have no proof of this. I have zero proof that this actually happened or existed, but I like to believe that I had played Justin Wong when he was like, I don't know, 11 and I was like 15 or whatever. I was playing.
I don't know who that is.
He's have you ever seen Moment 37 in Evo?
No.
After this, look up Moment 37. That was a pretty big one, but okay. He's a big fighting game community guy. He's really, really good. Like he excels, wins a lot of competitions. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Street Fighter 2. Part 2 of that. I'm playing. They had a bunch of fighting games. And I'm playing, and I played always as Ryu and Strider, and that's who I played with. Those were my team. Mm-hmm. A young Chinese kid comes up to me, puts in a quarter, picks Wolverine and someone else. I don't know who the someone else is because he so exquisitely handed me my bottom as Wolverine alone. I kid you not, he was juggling me every time, and I'm trying to block for dear life. And as soon as he would peg, pink, I would just open up, and that was it. He would immediately just start with a combo. He beat me so bad that I didn't even bother rematching. I just left the arcade. I said, I have no business being here. I'm going to walk away now. But yeah.
And he never went back.
Yeah, so it's, it's a little fun fact. But yeah, it was Marvel vs. Capcom. So that's a memory that I have. I do actually really enjoy them, yes.
Yeah, those games are fantastic. I suck, and I'm fine being terrible at these games. But they all have online stuff. So I think that it when this does come out, I don't think we had a release date for it. I could be wrong about that. But when it does come out, I think I might try and put a like a little tournament together on the NerdNest Discord.
Oh.
So if you haven't joined the Discord, there's a link down below the like button. Go ahead and check that out. We already hit Zelda. Are you gonna, like you said, you collect physical Zelda games? Are you also gonna buy the Nintendo Switch Lite Hyrule Edition?
Oh, dude, they had me. I have so many 3DSs. I have so many 3DSs. I looked at that Zelda when they made the Lite version. I was like, oh no, I have to buy this. I don't want to buy it. I don't own a Switch Lite. I don't own one single Switch Lite, so I could buy it. I'll take a look. I don't know. I have so many 3DSs that I don't think I can stomach another Switch. I have 4 Switches. So I think I'm going to avoid this one, even though I love Zelda themed the consoles. Like I had the Majora's Mask 3DS XL.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see. Right now, it's going to be a no for me.
So I'm not going to. And Carrie, don't listen to this because it'll probably make you want to go get one. My wife has a Switch Lite. I think the Switch Lite is superior to the Switch. It's smaller and it's more portable, and there's no flexing on the Joy-Cons when you're holding it in your hand. It's just such a really, really good experience playing on the Switch Lite with that little tiny screen that I absolutely like. If I used to say this a lot because I used to play Switch stuff all the time. If the Switch Lite gave me the ability to output to HDMI, I probably would have replaced my Switch with a Switch Lite because I think it's a better form factor. It is more comfortable to hold. And that's the thing about the Switch, is that it's one of the least comfortable things that you've ever held in your hand, at least for me.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely the more portable one, especially with that simple clamshell top that they have, where you keep the back of it exposed, but it just has like a flip top. So it just like
what?
Yeah. So the Switch Lite, there's a case that you can get for it.
A case.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. That kind of inserts into like these little spacers, so that you can kind of just like flip that open and not have to take it out and like put it into a bag. It makes it so that it's like, oh, okay, you can just flip this, and you can almost pocket it. It's certainly the most pocketable version of the Switch Lite. I just prefer the Switch OLED. Switch OLED is such a fantastic display. I really love the Switch OLED.
If this was OLED,
right? Yeah,
they would have got me.
Yeah, like if they had a Switch Lite OLED and it was the Zelda version, that would be like, oh man, good job, well done, Nintendo. You know, you know how to do things.
And they could have raised the price $50 and they'd still sell it.
Yeah.
You know, oh, it's OLED. Yeah. All right, well, I guess I'm going to spend $250 on it. All right, let's talk about Metroid Prime 4. You know, you go back to 2017, the first year of the Switch. They had just released the Switch in March. 3 months later, they're at E3 in June. And then they announced Samus Returns for the 3DS. Now, I have said a million times that because they had just released the Switch and then they were releasing Metroid Samus Returns for the 3DS, they had no choice but to announce Metroid Prime 4. Otherwise, people would have said, even Nintendo doesn't believe in the Switch. They're still releasing games on the 3DS. So clearly Nintendo is not committed to the Switch. It would have hurt sales for the Switch if they didn't say, yeah, we know we just announced Metroid Samus Returns, but don't worry, we're also making a Metroid for the Switch. And then 2 years later, they said, development hell, we're starting over, sorry. And it's been 5 years and they have said nothing. And finally we saw it. When you saw it, are you excited for this? Because I am over the moon.
Yeah, super. Once they were like, oh, one more thing, I was like, there it is, Metroid Prime 4, we're going to see it. There was a part of me that thought we were going to see the upgraded visuals that would be running on a Switch 2, but them not saying it at all. But then when I was watching it, it was outrageously apparent when you first saw it, like how all the aliasing that is going on, even in Samus's blaster, you can like count the steps on how sharp those things are. I was like, oh, okay, so this is running on the Switch. It looks great for running on the Switch. It still looks fantastic, but then just like going through it and all the very primey feel for it. Yeah. I'm I'm super hyped for it, but I'm also happy, like a gut happy feeling that Metroid is going to be a launch title. Like they haven't said anything, right? But
No.
I think we would. I am willing to bet money that Metroid Prime 4 is going to be, a split title. It'll be available on the Switch and also on the Super Switch the same day. And
I
yeah,
agree.
it's going to be a launch title. So there's a part of me that feels like this Metroid series is finally getting its due. It's like getting the respect that it deserves because it's always been an also ran type of series that Nintendo's had. So obviously nothing has been announced at all. So this could not happen. But this is something that I truly believe in that's going to happen, and it makes me happy just thinking about it.
Yeah, well, this game is coming out in 2025, and Nintendo has said we're going to announce the successor to the Nintendo Switch in fiscal year 2024. I'm going to guess that we'll probably hear about it this holiday season, probably around October, and it will release on, let's see, 2017. So on the 9-year anniversary of the Nintendo Switch, it'll release next March.
Right.
Along with Metroid Prime 4 will be a launch game. And, you said it's going to be one of those games where it works on the Switch and also works on the next thing. I think all of the Switch games are going to be forward compatible to the next thing. Nintendo, they've when you make a new system and you leave everything in the past behind, you give a lot of people permission to just say, all right, well, I'm done with that then. But if you say all of the games that you bought are forward compatible with the next system, then that is this new enticement to say, well, I guess I'm going to upgrade then, because there's going to be games that are going to come out that are going to not run very well on the previous Nintendo Switch systems. And it'll also, the new one will also play all of your old games. So it almost makes it like a no-brainer. I mean, look, people buy multiple Nintendo Switches just because they come out in different colors.
Yeah.
You're looking at one of them right there and one of them right here. Like both of us. My wife got me the OLED Zelda deck, or not deck, Switch, for my birthday, I think it was, or maybe it was Christmas. I can't remember now. But she got me that, so I have the two Switches. I think that this is going to be a launch. This is absolutely 100% going to be a launch title for the Super Switch or the Switch Beyond, because you know how Nintendo, like, we've got Super Mario Beyond and The Legend of Zelda Beyond and Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I wonder if they're going to try and work that in somewhere. But this game looks fantastic, and there was one part of the trailer. Hopefully this music doesn't play. There was one part of the trailer close to the end where, you see Samus. I'm going to try and remember to capture this and put it on screen right now. You see Samus like walking out of a cave, and then the camera pans around and shows the world. That does not look like it's running on a Nintendo Switch to me, where then it shows 2025. That does not look like it's running on a Nintendo Switch. That looks way better to me. Maybe I'm wrong.
I got you. So the ending part of it, I'll have to relook at the ending part of it. I was so focused on the gameplay part of it and just like geeking out. Honestly, there's parts of it where like I'm in and out from my memory. I'm just like, oh, it's going to be a launch title. Like I'm just daydreaming while I'm witnessing the trailer. So there's parts of it that are super spotty to me. I was more just like geeking out of like how awesome this is going to be. I'm looking forward to it. I've always been, when I played Metroid back in the 80s, and I was very young when I played Metroid. Metroid scared me a lot. So did Kid Icarus. Those two games, which seemed like they really shouldn't be all that scary, scared me a whole bunch. And I don't know, I think it was just the music or just the environment, especially how Metroid is. It's a very claustrophobic type of game, and going through it and like almost immediately it challenges you with like figure this out. And I think I might have been like 7 or 8, and I was just like, this game is too intense for me. And then Super Metroid, playing that after, like way after it launched on Super Nintendo, and like loving Super Metroid. I was probably like, I don't know, 15 when Metroid like firmly implanted what it was to be like a Metroid game into my head. Super Metroid, I have much more fonder memories of than the original Metroid. But man, since Super Metroid, I've been a gung-ho Metroid fan, and I felt like it's always just needed more respect. So, yeah, super excited.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited for that game. And honestly, I'm more excited for that than I am for the Zelda game.
Oh, yes.
Even though I finished Link's Awakening. I finished that on the Switch. Fantastic time. Wonderful game. Love the art style. But Metroid Prime 4 is way more exciting to me. So there's that. All right. So real quick, before we wrap things up, I've got two things. Number one, I don't know if there's going to be an episode of the podcast next week. Next weekend, Carrie and Russ and Rich and myself are all going to go to Philadelphia, and we're going to meet up, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're going to meet up, and we're going to have a live show where we do the show live in front of like people at Too Many Games. So I'll leave a link in the description down below the like button so that you guys can find out if it's nearby, when it's going, and you can like buy tickets or whatever. Not tickets to see us, but like buy tickets to the show. If you're in the show, you can come see us for free. So we've got that going on next week, Friday and Saturday. Friday, I think, in the evening, we're going to be like hanging out and people can come by and talk to us and stuff. But then on Saturday, late afternoon, early evening, I can't remember the times off the top of my head, we're going to be sitting down and actually recording a show. And hopefully I went out and I bought like equipment to hook into their stuff so that hopefully I can capture this and then bring it home and upload it on the YouTube channel. So if there's a show next week, that's what it will be. And if there's not a show next week, well, you know that I couldn't figure something out, and better luck next time to Bill. But speaking of me, a few episodes ago, we had Gardner Bryant on the show, and he talked about a game that he made called Dudelings Arcade Sportsball. And I made a joke that we should record lines for his show for DLC. And he said, "Hey, did you actually want to do that?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And so both me and Rich have recorded like we're now downloadable announcers. I don't think that it costs anything, but we're downloadable announcers in that game where, I'm like, home team scores, like that kind of thing. So I just wanted to tell people about that. There will be a link in the description down below so that you guys can check out that game. It's a $5 game. Support independent developers by picking that up. And I'm not getting anything for it. Like he offered to pay me, and I was like, no, I'm just doing this because it's fun. But check it out, and you can hear my stupid voice in a video game, which is one of the weirdest things that I've ever been able to say. So there you have it. Carrie, what are you working on for videos right now?
I have a few. I'm working on a new NUC from Minis Forum and also B-Link, so I have those to come out. I am looking at the Asus Ally X, and then there's some other videos that I want to still make about Taipei and Computex. I'm still getting some information, like the Zotac Zone and the XPG handheld that they had made. So I have a lot of stuff. I just have to get to it.
Yeah, the Zotac Zone, I've seen a lot of people asking about that. I don't know anything about it. Maybe it's something that we can bring up next week when we're talking on stage. Like if you have thoughts about it.
I have a lot of thoughts, yeah.
He has a lot of thoughts, but we don't have time to get to those thoughts today because we've already been going for an hour and a half and then some. So you guys could have spent that hour and a half doing anything you wanted anywhere, but you decided to sit down and hang out with us for an hour and a half, and I appreciate you. So thank you so much. And from the Nerd Nest, I hope you guys stay awesome. Bye-bye, everybody.